that helpful. The other one is joint small groups. So besides just being on the same themes, this can go with the themes, but I love the idea, if you can start small, of having your congregations come together and just have the same covenant group, start to share covenant groups. So one phenomenon that I hear all the time when I go around to congregations is we have a problem with sticky church. We have at least 10, in some cases 20% of our congregation that lives 40 minutes or more away from our church. Everybody, does anybody have that issue? Do you a good 10 to 20% of your people that live 40 minutes or more away? In some cases, a lot more. I mean, a lot more than that. So, and what I hear often is the folks will haul them and their families in for Sunday, but they won't come for the Tuesday night small groups. So you have a phenomenon with anybody who's 40 minutes away, they participate in worship but not in the small groups. And what do we know about stickiness and membership retention? That any members, or new, especially new members that are connected to just one piece of your church and not in a small group, do not stay for anything more from 14 months. I think it's 14 to 16 months is about all you can keep them. And if you can get them in just a small group and worship, that doubles to triples the staying power. So what do? Well, if both churches do small groups, I come to Charlie's church for worship because I just like the way Charlie preaches. No offense to Joan, she's fine, but you know, I drive to Charlie's church because I just like Charlie's voice because it's so smooth and silky. But I live right next to Joan's church, and right next to for my small group stuff, if they're all in the same small groups, I get my small group, and because they're on the same themes, I still feel like I'm part of the same journey. So remember, that's another sharing circle. And why is that a capacity thing? Because ministers, I mean, if you're a bigger church, membership, director services, or if you're in a smaller church, a minister spend so much time doing one-on-one, just keeping people. How many coffees do we have? How many phone calls? How many do we follow up on you? Because stickiness isn't in the church. So just by creating stickier systems, the job of the minister goes down. When we, in my Canandaigua church, had 80 members, had 68 people in small groups. Now, we had 100 people, but that was huge. So, and my work down there, who brought up the question about don't they want pastoral connection? No. No. After we got small groups in place, they got their personal needs met in the small groups. And I would even be sneaky, and I always led the group of the newcomers. So I turned all of the UU 101 newcomers into a small group for the first 6 months to just meet with me. Because, you know, of course, you all want to meet with the ministers, right? And I'm joking a little bit, but it's true. We do know that ministers have a cachet. Now, what would I have done if I wouldn't have done that small group? I would have had to have a coffee in a small church with every single one of those new people for the first 3 months. So all of a sudden, instead of a month where I had 8 individual 2-hour coffees, I had a 1 2-hour group every month of those folks. So you see, once you're in this mentality of redundancies and simplicities, there's way in which it all comes together. And this is big. Okay?
Well, too, when that happens, and if your personal connection as a new member is only with the minister, and then the minister leaves, you know, right, you're done.
Right.
And that's a sort of sad and irresponsible leadership model.
Right.
Anyway.
And I mean, when I have more time, I really go into the depth of this stuff, but it's not like the point I'm trying to make, this isn't Scott Taylor's, so creative mind. This stuff that I'm saying came naturally once I shifted mindset. I don't know where it's coming from. You know what I mean? Like, all I know is that somehow this multi-site thinking shifted me, and my brain chemistry got tweaked up. And I just look and think differently. And these ideas just start popping in your head about how to be more creative and connecting and eliminating redundancies and combining things. It's just a whole different mindset.
Scott, but what I hear too is that your mind opened up to not how much time can I save, but how can I serve everyone better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's
so
not...
they didn't feel shortchanged. They felt that you were doing it to serve all.
That's beautifully said, because you notice it wasn't just how can Scott save time. It was look at redundancies in the system. You're looking at, I mean, that is a beautiful point, because There's a warped version of this where you make it all about you,
Yeah.
saving your time. That will muck things up. There's another version where you're looking at your system to make a more efficient system that serves everyone. And if you have that view, you are still paying attention to people's, how can I still serve these people in a more efficient way? And do, that's wonderfully said. I'm going to steal that, actually. That's really good. Okay. Youth and young adult. This is a little bit more straightforward, and I think I've already addressed it in a lot of ways. But when you combine, a lot of these are combining too. So with youth leader and young adult, there's two now, maybe three situations that are wonderful where 3 and 4 not just even 2, but 3 or 4 congregations, 2 of them are in New England, so in fairness they're close, have come together to hire their own youth director and created a common youth program in that cluster. I think we are not, we are not tapping, there's so much room for this to be a model that we're just not. And I know Joan, who's the regional lead of this region, is committed. We're getting ready to hire 2 new staff for your region, and we're going to ensure that 2 of those staff have a youth specialization in this region.
Well, 2, yeah, we have one already.
Right, but I'm saying in the end, there'll be 2, it's not like one person, but we'll have 2 staff. I mean, that's how important this is that 2 of our staff, 2 of the specializations will be devoted to youth. And I just think it's not, and notice I didn't just put a youth group leader, but that youth group sharing. And I would also pair this up. I mean, if I had more time to help you discern your strategy, I would say don't forget that piece about joining with your liberal religious colleagues. I mean, think about the power of if you used a networked youth approach between 2 or 3 of your churches, and then you opened your mind to also with your liberal religious brothers and sisters, suddenly you have a 300 herd of liberal youth in your region. Now you're going to start to think about the power of that and how they can change their community, not how can we just give them a cool con evening at a church. I mean, I'm saying critical mass starts to change how you think about that. So this is not just how we can help our youth have a better experience. There's a much bigger role here. And I know that people who do youth work are always hungry for that and are always frustrated. Every youth person I know has said, I just can't get over the fun hump, is what I've heard some call it. I want to start to turn youth into collective power, mobilizing them, but it's really hard until I can get that critical mass. So there's a lot of potential in that one. Same thing for regional community ministers and social justice ministers. I could do a whole nother analysis of unkindness and brutality, how our system has been unkind and brutal to our community ministers. There's a whole way in which everything that I said applied to our parish ministers and our RE folks is almost doubly with our community ministers. And then the sad thing is, it's also tragic for us because we're not utilizing them. You know what I mean? To help mobilize, to help mobilize us. And I'm not trying to make this all about professionals, let me be clear. Lay leadership is key to any of this work. But I believe in also professional leadership. I think there's a reason why when you're getting ready to have a baby, you tend to be grateful for a midwife in the room. And you don't say, this is lay polity, this is congregational birthing. I'm just as much a leader as you. No, we all have our special skills. And I think our community ministers are midwives. It doesn't mean they take over, it doesn't mean they do all the work, but they're midwives and can be very valuable to bringing us into more powerful networks. So this is a big one that I think we haven't tapped into. And this is one where community ministers that I know of already travel a ton. So where some parish ministers like me may be a little bit spoiled and not so tough, where we don't want to drive more than maybe a 2-hour radius to be in a multi-site, a lot of community ministers and social justice ministers are used to driving. are used to doing a lot of driving already. And to do the same amount of driving with a full-time job will feel a lot better than the same amount of driving with a half-time job. So big possibilities there. This one just seems boring, right? It seems boring, but oh my God, this is huge. There's so many redundancies in our administrative and our back office. Payroll systems we haven't condemned. You know, just how many of us are paying separately for payroll systems? Both churches saved money when we networked with Canandaigua and First Unitarian. We saved hundreds of dollars by combining and being in one. Website stuff, with things going on websites, you know, there's just ways in which your web, the person keeping that up can do both. So, I mean, there's plenty of examples here, and if you're in there's the same turnover analysis. We haven't done enough research yet, but anecdotally, I know from my own situation, the turnover with administrators in smaller congregations is incredibly high and wasteful, because you can only apply 10-hour a week, 5-hour a week. So having a full time, even if that person has to drive a little bit, Monday in one church, Tuesday in another, that's huge. I already went off on this one. All right, you guys wrestle with that.
We'll skip that.
You guys wrestle with that, but then I mean the idea that what I want to say about that is two things. Number one, we don't even have to talk about that on the front end. Remember that thing I was going off on? If we start to have a 5-year strategic plan, a cluster 5-year strategic plan, and we have a covenant, what is our vision as a cluster for how we do this region, some of this conversation will come naturally. After we're passionate about what we want to do together, then the follow-up conversation on what resources now do we all have to make that vision happen become a lot easier. You do not want to start that conversation at the table with, hey, you've got a lot of money. That's not what I'm talking about with this. And I also would say the people who have more resources, remember when I said something about moving from optional to obligated, from what did I say, to claim, also I said a claim on each other, belonging. It works both ways. So smaller congregations are allowed to go to bigger resources and say, it ain't your endowment. But the other church can also look and say, yep, but you need to make some changes for this thing to work. There are, if you want to call me greedy, first of all, let's hope we can all talk nicer, right? If you want to ask me to think differently about my resources, I got to ask you to be a little bit more open about some of your seemingly unhealthy or dysfunctional patterns that you've developed in a church. Or not even unhealthy. What about the idea, and I don't mean to pick on you, but we want to hold on to our minister being our friend. Well, maybe that's what you have to give up. You know what I mean? Like it's a covenant. It's both ways. Both in this relationship, both sides have to be willing to sacrifice for a bigger thing. And so that's part of covenanting with each other and being able to be mature enough to talk with each other about what we're willing to give up for something that we both love more. And then joint outreach. The big thing here is this is the thing that's going to ultimately keep us off the waterfall. And I can end on this. There are, thousands of UUs out there that we call nuns and spiritually but not religious. But it's our form. Like I said, it's our form that's, they are our faith. They share our faith. It's our institutional forms. So we have got to be able, if we're not going to go off the waterfall, to be able to reach out. So we have to be able to build entrepreneurial programming, the congregations and beyond. We have to have entrepreneurial, innovative, spiritually but not religious, beyond congregations and beyond communities. Now, having said that, remember my model about most of the beyond efforts also are stuck. Ironically, even though they're Gen X, led by Gen X and millennial religious leaders, they are just as stuck in the baby boomer leader economic mentality of capacity comes from without. So their thinking is, how can I write grants? How can I make Shelter Rock give me more money? How can I get money? How can I am doing something special, which of course they are. How can I get, that's gone. So I'm saying that world of capacity coming out is gone. So if we want to make congregations and beyond thrive, my little catchphrase is, the key to congregations and beyond is congregations and in between. There's no way that these innovative efforts will work unless they're embedded within a web of 3 or 4 other congregations, or if large churches don't take them on as sort of embedded in there. And that's the idea, that's that in-between capacity again.
With the non-outreach, is there a particular group or programs you think are particularly effective? If we free up resources, we should steal those ideas and models?
Yeah, although that's too big for me to answer here at the end. Talk with me a little bit afterwards, but that is a priority. We've actually, the UUA has just set up and is about to unleash at GA what we're calling an emerging highway support network. Basically that is for all emerging community, emerging congregations, we're much more intentional about how we'll coach you and support your discernment. So I don't know if you're coming to GA or not, but there'll be a lot more news about just emerging communities and congregation support. There'll be tons of workshops in the next year on that, tons of workshops at GA. That's it.
Yeah.